And now one more time, I'll welcome everybody and let you know that we have Nick LeRoy here, who's the Chief Enrollment Officer with SchoolMint, who will take us through building a winning student enrollment system today. So Nick, it is all yours. Take it away.
All right, sounds good. Hey, thanks, Corey. I appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for taking time out of your day to spend about an hour with us talking about enrollment. For those of you who are here today on Monday, appreciate you coming in on President's Day. And for those who are watching us later via YouTube, hey, good to have you. I'm glad that you took the opportunity to do this. So we're going to talk about enrollment. But before we do that, let me give you just a little bit about my background and a little bit about what I'm bringing to the table and why you should listen to me. So I'm the Chief Enrollment Officer here at SchoolMint. So what that means is I work with schools and public school systems around the country really to drive greater enrollment for them. I've done this for about 8 years, and prior to working just in marketing and enrollment, I spent a couple years as a charter school authorizer for the state of Indiana. But prior to getting into education, I spent time as more of a classical marketer working in big pharma for about 15 years. Okay, so it was kind of part of the dark side. And then I saw the light and got into education. Okay, I've got an MBA from Emory and a BA in history from the University of Utah. I'm with SchoolMint, and SchoolMint is the leader in helping schools improve their ability to attract, enroll, and retain students. That's about who we are and who I am, but let's get into the actual presentation on how you can improve your school's student enrollment. Okay, so what we're going to cover today is we're going to cover 3 learning objectives. So we're going to walk through what are some of the macro factors contributing to a more challenging enrollment environment. I talk to a lot of schools around the country, and the common complaint or the common observation I hear from them is, my goodness, it seems to be getting harder and harder every day. Well, and it is, and we'll kind of help you understand a few reasons why that's happening and what you can do about it. Then we'll talk about the steps needed in building a strong enrollment system for your school. We'll start to talk a little bit about some of the foundations, as well as what are the things that you need to do from a marketing, recruitment, and retention perspective. And then we'll go into some specifics, some things that you can implement at your school tomorrow, if you'd like. Oh, did we stop? Did we stop sharing on this? Let's try this again. There we go. Okay. Well, it was good because it was just the intro, guys. Okay. So we didn't lose anything on that. Thanks, Mitch, for letting me know that. So and go ahead and flag that again. I'm a Google guy, I'm not a Zoom guy, and I can only figure out how to do one piece of technology at any one time. So bear with me a little bit here, gang. Okay, so let's jump down to the macro factors impacting enrollment. Well, we've got a few things here. You know, the first two are really around birth rates and population shifts. So we're seeing some decline in birth rates. We're seeing some people moving around in the country, and then we're also seeing the rise of what in marketing we would call competitors and substitutes. Really, these are just other school options that people have. Let's talk about birth rates here. And so you can take a look at this chart. And I show this chart on a lot of presentations because I think it's really important for people to grasp the magnitude of this situation. Right now, we are at the lowest birth rate since the Great Depression. Okay, since the Great Depression. And you can see birth rates really peaked around 2007. And what happened in 2008? Well, that was the start of the Great Recession. And anytime you have economic uncertainty, people stop having kids. And really since 2007, I hate to say this, but we have remained in this feeling of great economic uncertainty. But if you think about this, the kid that was born in 2007, 16 years old. So in the next 2 years, we're going to see peak. And then it's all going to continue to get smaller and smaller. So the big takeaway here is that there are, in a lot of places, there are just fewer kids available to you, which means that you have to work that much harder in enrollment. Okay. And then depending upon where you are in the country, you may also be dealing with some other population shifts. So this is one that I show a lot of times when I'm talking to both a rural and an urban audience. And what this is showing is it's showing that a lot of the rural counties around the country, people are moving out of the rural counties into the urban. So we're starting to see a decline in population in the country where everyone's kind of moving into the cities. Now, I'm here in the Midwest, I'm in Indianapolis, and you can see that 68% of our rural counties lost population over the last 20 years. You know, almost half had more deaths than births, and 85% more people moving out than in. So in a lot of places, we're seeing just a push into the cities. So if you're out in the rural area, not only are you dealing with lower birth rates, but you're just dealing with people not coming into, not being in your town anymore. So there's some population headwinds that are impacting enrollment that's making it harder. Now, there is some good news. There is some things that are happening right now, which is improving the position for private schools. Okay. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting when I was doing the research for this presentation is right now we're finding that 30% of students attend a school that is not their zoned school. So this is students who are in homeschool, students who are in private school, students who are in magnet school. But this concept of this zoned neighborhood school is starting to go away as parents exert more and more choice. Okay, so that's an ongoing trend that we saw, and then it got really accelerated when COVID came around, and a lot of people who were currently in the public school system didn't necessarily agree with some of the requirements around masks or in-person versus virtual, and so a lot of people during COVID, a lot of families during COVID shifted and tried a different type of school system. They tried charter schools or virtual schools or home schools, or a lot of them came to us as private schools. And that's great because now they finally realize what great schools we have, but it caused this big shift. And for a lot of people, they're finding that, you know, this is actually my preferred school. You know, I don't know what it is with the Lutheran schools, but I do know that Catholic schools, for the first time in 25 years, actually increased their enrollment. And a lot of that was because of people trying it for the first time and going, wow, this is actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I'm going to stay here. Another thing that we're seeing too is there's this large scale political support for ESAs, educational savings accounts, or vouchers. You're seeing that happen in a lot of places. Like I know there's lots of legislation happening in Utah, Idaho, Iowa, and the big one down in Florida of having the money follow the kid. And so suddenly that question around tuition may not be as big of an impediment for people to attend your school. So we're really seeing a big push on that. So there's, despite the birth rate issue, there's a lot of positive headwinds happening, or a lot of positive momentum happening for private schools. Okay, but one of the big questions that we have, or one of the things that we need to make sure that we're doing, is we need to make sure that people are picking our schools because of what we're offering, not just because they don't like the alternative. And that's what happened during COVID. A lot of people said, hey, I want to try this other school because I don't like my public school. Okay, so did they come to us because they love us and our message and how we teach, or did they come to us because we weren't those guys? That happened on a lot of time, in a lot of situations. So what we really need to do is we really need to continue to promote all the great things about our school, so we become the school of choice rather than the school of, well, it's not those guys. Okay. All right. So net, challenging environment in enrollment, but a little bit more positive for private schools. Okay, so let's talk about a framework or a way to think about enrollment. And I found that this works really well for folks who maybe haven't come to enrollment as their profession. Maybe you're the principal or a faculty member that's kind of been pulled into enrollment. It always helps to think of this in kind of a series of buckets, or a more strategic way. And this is the framework that I use with a lot of schools, and it seems to make sense for them. They kind of can understand separating it in this way. So there at your foundation, you have, who is it that you're serving, the story of your school, and how do they shop? Okay. If you understand those three things, you're a long way towards creating a really strong enrollment system. But a lot of times we jump past this and we just say, well, let's just get some ads up on Facebook, or we just got to do an open house. We just got to go do, rather than sitting back and saying, okay, what does the ideal family look like that we're seeking to attract? And when we describe our school to her, are we really addressing her needs and making her excited? And are we in the places where she would go to look for information about our school? If you spend a little bit of time on this foundation, and we'll talk about it, you're going to be a lot better. Okay. So there's the foundation, then there's the bucket of marketing, which is attracting people to us, identifying them by name, and then nurturing them to get them to come to our school in some fashion. Then we go into the recruitment phase, which is how are we kind of selling them on this, the tours and things like that, getting them to kind of close the deal, sign up for us. And then finally, there's the retention piece of this. Okay. And a lot of people will say, well, Nick, I thought this was an enrollment presentation. Why are you talking about retention? Well, every good enrollment system is built upon a strong retention foundation. So the better your retention is, the less you have to work in enrollment. So it's always really important to have a strong retention system as well. Okay, so that's the framework that we're going to use as we work through this today. Okay, all right, so we talked about this. Understand your potential family, develop and communicate your story, understand how they shop, and then make it very easy for them to say yes to your school. These are the foundations. These are the steps that we need to take before we do the Facebook campaign, before we revamp the website. We've really got to understand these things about ourselves and about our families. So let's talk about our customer, if you will. And forgive me for using more of a business term on this, but I think looking at this as a customer that we're seeking to attract, seeking to satisfy, seeking to make happy, gives us a good framing of this and helps us to understand and treat them slightly differently than if we were just to say our families. Okay. But one of the best things that you can do is to really sit down and think about, what does your customer look like? What do they look? What motivates them? What do they look like from a demographic perspective? How old are they? Where do they look for information? What are their core needs? You know, how does the balance between academics and faith, how does that work within their life? And kind of bring them to life, sketch them out, describe them. Really spending some time thinking about the families that you're seeking to serve really makes you a lot more effective when it comes time to describing your school and when it comes time to actually promoting your school. Because what you really want to do is you really want to understand their needs and then just hit the bullseye when you're describing your school. And so I always tell people, spend a little bit of time and write out what the persona looks like. Okay. And, you know, for a lot of schools, I suggest you do two different scenarios. Talk about what a family that is looking at your school for the first time in kindergarten or pre-K looks like. Okay. Well, they're nervous and they're scared because it's probably their first child. So what are we doing to help them realize we have a great, warm pre-K teacher? Are we doing a video of her in the classroom showing how great she is with the kids? You know, when you start to realize their need is reassurance, then it's very easy to connect the dot of saying, oh, okay, we need to make sure that they understand how qualified she is, and we need to show her in action, because that's going to reassure these nervous new parents. Okay. So usually what I will tell folks to do is think about those two personas. Think about someone who's starting at school with you for the very first time, and then maybe somebody who's transferring from, say, the public school to your school. And what do they need? And what are they looking for? How do you talk to them? It's really good to understand who your customer is, who your ideal family is. So then once you know who you're trying to serve, talk about yourself and why should she send her children to your school. This is the thing that I see a lot of schools really struggle with. And we call this, in marketing, we call this a value proposition. Tell me what my child is going to get at your school that they're not necessarily getting at the competitive school down the road. Give me the reason why I should choose you. And again, this is something that schools sometimes struggle with because it's hard to do, but you've got to give me a very clear reason to pick you. And when you go back and think about what's on your website and look at those descriptions of your school, ask yourself this: are we being informative or are we being promotional? Are we using adjectives and really describing how great our school is? Are we talking about exciting things or are we talking about factual things? Make me want to see my children at your school. Okay, so really describe your story very well. Help me understand through reasons to believe or quantifiable success metrics, what am I going to be getting by sending my child at your school? And then help me to trust you more by providing testimonials from very happy families who have chosen your school. Okay. These are all things that kind of weave together into the story of your school, the story of why I should choose you from the multitude of other choices that I have. Okay. So we know who we're serving. We know what our story is. So we're talking about how people shop for schools. Okay. So like other products, go online and you Google best school near me, best private school near me. Okay. Everybody starts their searching online. Okay. Then if you make it to the website, then you spend some time looking through and saying, okay, is this school right for my family? What do they offer? Do they offer what I'm looking for? Okay. If that's a yes, they have everything I need. Then they go into that test drive phase where it's like, okay, great. So it looks good. Let me go attend an open house. Let me go for a school tour. Okay. Let me engage with them until finally they enroll. Okay. So we call that the enrollment funnel. Okay, where they flow through that, and at each stage they get smaller and smaller because people fall out. And if they can't find you, they fall out at the top. If they don't like what's on your website, they fall out in the middle. And if they eventually decide not to enroll, they fall out at the end. Okay, but it's up to us to try to maximize at every stage of that enrollment funnel. Okay, this is the same concept that universities use. It's a very common thing in enrollment. Okay, so it's up to us to try to maximize our efforts through the enrollment funnel. Okay. So what did I say that they do first? Well, they Google. Okay. So where are you showing up when people are Googling you? Okay. It's really, really important to try to show up as high as you can in search results. So this graph, the pie chart on the left shows the percentage of Google traffic that stays on the front page. On page 1 of Google, 92% of searches never get to the second page. Okay. So if you're a school in, let's say, Topeka, Kansas, and you're on page 3, when I'm searching for private school in Topeka, no one's ever going to find you. So it's really important not just to launch your website, but to make sure that your website is on the front page of Google. Okay. And just being on the first page of Google is not enough. You can see on that line chart, 30% of the clicks go to that first listing in Google. So you want to be front page, first listing. Okay. And that's hard. Okay. But if you're on page 2, people aren't finding you. Okay. And remember that's the very top of the enrollment funnel. If they can't find you, they're dropping out. So it's really important for you to do everything that you can to try to maximize your position in Google. Okay. Because you got to be found. That's the first step. But a lot of times, the first results that come up in Google may not be the schools. You may be Googling best school near me, but what's going to come up are these school review websites. Now, I've yet to meet an educator who really likes these school review websites. Okay. A lot of times it's a place for disgruntled parents to talk about schools. But you know what? Parents always check them. Okay. So it's really important for you to go into these websites like Great Schools or Niche. And there are some different ones in different markets. Like I've seen Noodle be important in certain markets. Yelp, for some reason, is really big in school reviews in the Pacific Northwest, private school review. But it's really important for you to go on these sites, claim your profile. That's free to do. It takes about 5 minutes to do, and ensure that it's accurate and there's good reviews on there. Because remember, this might be one of the first impressions that I have about your school. I couldn't find you on Google because you were on the 3rd page, but I found your niche profile. And if it's inaccurate or you've got a lot of challenging reviews, I may never even take the next step to get to your website. Okay, so it's really important to maximize your online reviews as well. Okay, then let's talk about your website. Now, your website it's your prime marketing asset. Okay, this is a lot of times it's your only marketing asset, but you got to make sure that it's good. Okay, first step on that is no technical issues. Okay, don't be like what I was today with some technical issues, but ensure that there's no broken links. Ensure that I can look at it with a mobile device. Okay, a lot of times I find school websites that are only desktop. Guys, like 60 to 70% of all traffic on the internet is on a mobile device. And so if when you're looking at your website, you're having to pinch the screen and things like that, that means it's not mobile friendly. And that's not a good experience. And make sure it loads quickly. Okay. This is a marketing asset, so orient it to the prospective parent. You have tons of ways to get information to your current parents. You can send them emails, you can call them. You have all this information, okay? But the only way you can talk to the prospective parents is via your website, okay? Is it translated? Well, go back to your customer personas. Do you serve a large population that maybe is not, English is not their first language, okay? Does it answer the question, why your school? Back to that story and the customer persona. Okay. Here's a big one. Allow me to envision my child at your school. I've run across a number of school websites that don't have any pictures of me, happy, smiley kids. That's the biggest thing that you guys want to put on there. Put wonderful pictures of the kids really enjoying their school. Okay. Really ensure that your website is completing two critical objectives. One, inform them about your school. And two, most importantly, to move them forward in their enrollment process. Okay. And we'll talk about this, but you really want them to take the next step. So they read about your school, like, oh, this sounds awesome. It sounds like the perfect school for my child. Okay. They see the pictures of the kids. Oh, I want my little Johnny to be in a school like that. Well, then what do they do next? You make it easy for them to take the next step, to sign up for a tour, to do a shadow day, to enroll. Okay, you've got to move them forward in the enrollment process. Your website is not a communications tool. Okay, it's a marketing tool. Marketing tools to get them to take the next step. Okay, so to get to that enrollment page, really should be 2 clicks or less. Okay, this is not as big of a problem with private schools as it is with public schools. Generally, public schools try to hide it for some reason, but you should always have enrollment on at least the front page of your school. Okay, all right. And really, you want to take this experience to wow them. Okay, now I'm going to try to show you guys this video that I thought was just awesome. So let me show this. Because I want to show you what a great school video can look like. Okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. This is a school called Ursuline Academy in New Orleans. Okay, I'd like you to Google that when you get done with this presentation. This is a school that you will want to have children, or you will want to have daughters so you can send them to this school. But this video really connects with people on an emotional basis. And this is a video that they spent about $10,000 to create. Okay, so that wasn't cheap. Okay, $10,000. They got an additional 35 inquiries and got an additional 17 enrollments as a result of it. Okay, so 17 enrollments. I've got my calculator here because I can't do math very well. 17 new enrollments at $7,500 a piece. That was an additional $127,000 in tuition revenue because of this video. So you can afford a $10,000 video if it produces like that. Okay, so I'd like you guys, when you get done with this, Google Ursuline Academy down in New Orleans and watch that video. It's really impressive. But you don't necessarily need to have something like what they have done. They did a great job, but make sure you have a school enrollment video that gets people excited. Okay, because I can read about your school,
but seeing it on video, seeing it in action makes a huge, huge difference. Remember, you're helping me to envision my child at your school. Okay. All right. Some additional components that I want you to have on your website. Okay. And I'll go through each of these things. Okay. A hero shot, fast facts about your school, the tuition page. I know that's not the fun one, but it's really, really important one. Quantifiable data about your school, testimonials, and then calls to action. So let's talk about these. Okay, hero shots. This is the first graphic that appears when I come to your website. Okay, this is where you should talk about the grade levels that you serve. Okay, and give a brief description about it. You should always have like a really nice image or things like that of your school. Okay, or of your students or things like that. This is your hero shot. This is the picture that tells 1,000 words sort of thing. Okay, so beautiful picture, but then also have a really powerful message, because this is almost like your billboard, if you will. So looking at these guys, Heron High School, ranked #1 in Marion County. Wow, well, that sounds good. That sounds like a really good school, you know? So they really throw their strongest short little snippet out at the very beginning. That's in your hero shot, okay? This is another one where they were showing that they had the highest graduation rates in their county, okay? But they tied that back into their message. So again, you really want this to be the most dramatic thing that you can. Okay, hero shot, really important. Number 2, fast facts. So I'm not going to read through all the copy on your website, but if I go to one page in the about your school, do I see something like this? This is from a Jesuit school in, I believe, St. Louis, called De Smet Jesuit. Okay, but they're talking about just some nice little selling points here that the parent can just read, that it's not necessarily about their academic performance, but it's about the culture and the climate at the school. You know, average response time for teachers, a service orientation, college credit hours, participation. Okay. 90% of teachers also serve as coaches, moderators, and trip chaperones. Okay. So something like that just really summarizes really quickly the benefits of your school. So another example from a public school here talks about their athletics and their band championship. But again, give me just a short and sweet little teaser that makes me want to learn more about you guys. Another one here, and it doesn't necessarily need to be our average class size is X. Okay, you know, 83% report being involved in an extracurricular school activity. Okay, 92% report feeling safe at their school. 91% report that adults at the school care about them. Again, guys, you can make these quantifiable data points, surveys, and things like that. It's not always just about state letter grades or SAT scores. There's a lot more that goes into it. And if you do your customer persona well, then you're going to be able to get to what your parents really need. Okay. I'm a big fan of quantifiable data when it does come to academics. This is an example from KIPP Memphis that shows their higher graduation rates than their surrounding peers. Okay. I always like to show quantifiable data when I can show that we have an advantage. Okay. And then testimonials. Testimonials are so important. This is from a secular private school in South Carolina, where they have this little girl talking about why she loves Mason Prep. Okay. And they videotaped this, and it's going to tug at your heartstrings. And you're going to go, oh, I want my little daughter to be like that. Okay. Having testimonials from happy parents saying why yours is a great school, really, really key. That's got to be on your website. Okay. And then get them to take action. Okay. So these are examples of pop-ups that appear on some of these websites in the midst of enrollment season, where they're like, come on, take action. Remember, your website, 2 purposes: tell the story, but then get them to take action. Don't hesitate to use these sorts of things to try to move them to the next step. Okay. Here's one where Noble, this is a group up in Chicago, they're playing the long game where they're trying just to get email addresses to send on their newsletter. Okay. It's another way just of identifying. Okay. KIPP Memphis, another good example. Okay. But again, get them to take the next step. The next step is, you know, attend a tour, be on our email address, shadow, things like that. Tell the story, get them to take the next step. That's what your website needs to do. Okay. All right. Let's talk about your tuition page. Okay. Super important for any private school. Generally going to be the number 2 or 3 most trafficked website or page on your website. Okay. So here's what you need to do. Number 1, you need to reestablish the value proposition of your school on this page. So look at this picture here. Okay, this is from St. Joseph Academy, which is a private school down Brownsville, Texas. Okay, what is their value proposition from looking at this? It's you send your child to St. Joseph, they're going to get into a great school. They're going to get into Yale, Texas, A&M, Notre Dame. They're reinforcing the benefit of their school on their tuition page. Okay, because remember, your tuition page is when parents are deciding if it's worth the investment. Don't say sacrifice. Maybe that might be a big Catholic school thing, but they are always talking about sacrifice. No. Parents are investing in their child's education with your school. Okay, so on your tuition page, you're going to reestablish your value proposition, why you're so good, put a testimonial up there and help to justify the investment. Then you're going to talk about your financial aid program. You're going to say, and this is going to be in generalities, something around, well, 50% of all students who attend our school receive some level of financial aid. Okay, whatever it is. Because what you're doing there is you're just giving them the hope that they might qualify for financial aid, because you just don't want them to drop out at this stage. You want to say there is a chance that you would be getting financial aid to get them to take the next step of touring or things like that. Okay. You want to explain your financial aid process and how to access it. This is something I see a lot of schools not doing correctly when there's a state voucher or ESA program. Don't just link to the state program. Explain it to your people. Okay, explain it in a way that's easy for them to understand. You don't want to depend upon the state to explain the tuition program that your school is running. Okay, because you want to be able to take tuition off the table for those parents. Okay, and then move them to the next step. You should always have a button on your tuition page of ready to enroll, ready to book a tour, something like that, because you want to move them to the next step. Okay, but the big thing is reestablish your value proposition. Don't make them go, oh my goodness, this is $15,000. And just that's all they're thinking. Have the picture of the young lady who's going to Yale and then saying, oh, this is $15,000, but she gets into Yale. Well, that's a very, very different equation. Okay, tuition page, really, really important. Okay, then you want them to take the next step. You want them to book a tour. You want them to book a call with you. You want them to take the next step. Okay, so you always want to do that online. Allow them to register for things online. I'm a working parent. I'm going to go on the website, and then when I think about calling the school to register, well, it's going to be 6 o'clock. Then I'm going to leave a voicemail. Then they're going to call me back, and it's going to go into voicemail. Then I'm going to spend 4 to 5 days going back and forth with the school just to register for a tour. Okay, parents hate that. The school hates it. Just allow them to register online. It's a very, very simple and easy process. Okay. I hope everybody here is allowing tours and encouraging tours. One of the best ways to showcase your school. Okay. So in this forum, I really want you to capture as much contact information as you can, because again, that leads you to have the ability to nurture them. Whether they show up for the tour or not, you're going to continue to reach out to them. Okay. Retention. Okay. It's easier to keep them than it is to win them back. Okay. So I know we don't like to talk about retention in that sort of fashion, but it's easier to keep a family than it is to get new families. So to do that, track your data in terms of retention. How many students are leaving? When are they leaving? Are they leaving in the middle of the school year, or are they leaving at the end? If they're leaving in the middle of the school year because they're unhappy with the school system, that's a whole heck of a lot different then okay, well, we're moving, so we're gonna move at the end of the year. Okay. If you're seeing a lot of people moving during the middle of the year, that tells you there might be an issue in the classroom there. Okay. And that's when you ask them the why are they leaving. Really important to spend a little bit of time when you have families that are leaving to understand the why, because it's so much easier to keep them than it is to attract them back. Okay. To do that, I'm a big advocate of using school climate surveys. So this is something simple, guys. You just write a survey, 20 questions, ask them their opinion about your school. Because I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but we have kind of moved into more of a customer sort of relationship where you have to constantly be trying to satisfy your parents and ensure that you're producing the best school that you can, and the best school in their mind, because they can easily leave. So it's really important to listen to their feedback via school climate surveys. Okay. I always advocate to do these every year. I always tell schools to do the same questions every single year, because then you can track longitudinally how well you're doing or not. Okay. This is a key metric. Are parents happy with our school? Well, the only way to really do that is to ask them. Now, I know a lot of times we'll just say, well, I'm not hearing any complaints. I guess they're happy. Okay. Or the chatter in the carpool line is pretty positive. Yeah, that's fine. We're working very anecdotally there. A school climate survey is a scientific tool that allows you to track to see how well you're doing. Okay. Give it every year, ask the same questions every year. And then once you've done that survey, communication out to your parents and say, hey, everyone, thank you so much for offering your feedback in our latest school climate survey. We really value your voice and all the things that you do to make this a special school for your children. Here's what you told us that we're doing great at. And here's what you said that we need to get a little bit better on. Okay. And we're going to do that. And here's our action plan. Okay. It's really important to follow that approach, guys, because if you release a survey and you don't tell them the score on that, you don't tell them what people said, they're going to assume that you're hiding something or that the results were bad. Okay. But if you're open and honest and say, listen, you said we need to get better at this, and this is how we're going to do it, they're going to grant you a lot of grace and stick with you for a little bit, because they know that you heard them and they know that you're trying to make the school a better place. Okay. But that's just a really simple way of improving your retention, is to listen to your constituents and then take action upon their feedback. Okay. All right. So here's your key takeaways for this. One, it's getting harder. Okay. If you've been feeling that and you're like, gosh, is it just me, or is this getting harder? No, it's getting a lot harder. Again, we're going to be peaking in the next year or so in terms of students. Okay. It's all downhill. You probably are seeing this now, that you might have more kids in your upper grades than you do in the lower grades. Just fewer people are having kids. Okay. And the competition is just getting harder on this. Okay. Recruitment has to be a priority for your school. The number one reason why a school closes is because of enrollment. Okay. And I know sometimes focusing on enrollment is not as rewarding as focusing on building strong culture or building faith formation or developing strong academics. I get that. But it's got to be a priority for your school, because no school, well, very few schools fail because their academic performance wasn't where it needed to be year after year. But they do fail because of lack of enrollment. Okay. Get your foundation right. Spend a little bit of time thinking about who your customer is, who your family is that you're serving, what's your school story, and then how do they shop for schools. Okay. And then those three buckets. Marketing, this is where you're trying to attract them, convince them to take the next step. So this is making sure they can find your website, making sure you're really good on school reviews, okay, and making sure that when they go to your website, it's a pleasant, good experience, and they're getting all their information. Then recruitment, you're allowing them to register for a tour online, and then you're wowing them in that school tour. And since you gathered all their contact information, you're following up. Okay. And then finally, retention, you're keeping them satisfied and at your school. If you do all those things, you're going to be in pretty darn good shape for enrollment. and you're going to be able to deal with some of the changes that are happening in the marketplace. Okay. All right. That's it, guys. My apologies on some of the technical challenges on that, not being able to showcase that video. I think it's a really good example of a really good school tour. I'm sorry, a school video. So Ursuline Academy down in New Orleans, it's an all-girls Catholic school. Really, really neat one for you to watch and learn from. Corey, I am more than happy to answer questions, or it can be about this presentation or about school enrollment marketing in general. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Great. I will open it up and let people unmute if they would like to ask questions. And while people get comfortable with the technology and unmute, I have one question. So you talk about, making sure that our schools are at the top of that Google search list. And we've all seen the ads, right? That you can pay for ways to get to the top of that Google search. Can you talk about any no cost ways of making sure that you can get to the top of that list, or at least at the first page?
Good. Okay, so I can't make any promises of getting to the first page. Google will never tell you exactly how to do it, but there's some tricks that you can do. So there is a thing called Google Business Profile. Okay, this is pretty much you certifying to Google, this is who we are, this is our address, here is our website. You're telling Google, hey, this is who we are. And so then Google will trust you more because a human has certified this back to them. And so that'll drive up your rankings. Now, what you need to do is when you're doing your Google Business Profile, it's going to ask you for a category. Okay. Private educational institution. That category is so important. I mean, if you think back, you guys can see I've got gray hair, back to the yellow pages. Okay, if you remember that, are you in the right category of businesses? Okay, so private educational institution, and then it's going to ask you for secondary categories. Okay, and that would be like elementary school, middle school, or things like that. Just doing your Google Business Profile, that takes care of 50% of it, just that. And it's free. It takes you about an hour to do.
Great, thank you. Anybody have any questions? I don't see any mute buttons taken off yet. Waiting a second here.
Corey, I had a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you so much for offering this this helpful information today. Do you have a recommendation on how to prioritize these categories on your wait list, and how to set it up to get the most benefit from those that are attempting to get more information about your school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question, Alyssa. I mean, so remember, think about your funnel. Okay, so you want to do everything you can to have more leads coming in. Okay. Yep. So that would be kind of your core awareness. So, if you and I were just kind of, brainstorming on this, I'd say, okay, what is your challenge? Is it awareness? People don't know about you. Engagement. People come to your website, but they kind of drop out. You're not engaging with them. They don't tour or anything like that. Or ultimately retention. You're not keeping people. So, I would ask you, okay, well, where do you see the biggest leakage, if you will? So I would say, say you're the admissions person, I'd say, okay, principal, you fix retention. Let's make sure that's going on and that's getting better. And then I would fix the, I would make sure that when they go to your website, they're registering for tours and your school tour process is top notch. Okay, because you've spent all this time, effort, and money to try to get them to register for that. Make sure that you're nailing that. Okay. And that's what you can do, and it doesn't cost you much money.
Right.
Then if it's a question of your awareness is low, that's what's going to cost you some money. Okay. Now do the Google Business Profile, get good on those online reviews. Okay. But then you might have to spend some money on social media ads or internet ads or things like that. So I'm a big believer that you fix the things that are the cheapest first and that have the biggest bang for the buck before you start to spend the money. Does that help, Alyssa?
It does. And then that website you provided, would that be one that offers me a good insight into a school tour process that nails it? Like, or do you have another recommendation of a website that really gets it?
Go to the SchoolMint website, go to the blog and just search on tour, and you'll find tons of information about how to do a good school tour.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a big one. So that's even something that we do. I was telling Corey before everyone joined, I was just in Illinois last week doing a secret shopper where I actually pretend to be a parent. Now, guys, I'm starting to age out of being able to do it for elementary schools. So I can kind of only do it for high schools now, but I've got a colleague who can do it for the younger. But we just pretend to be a parent. And we go through and we just kind of see, okay, was this a good school tour process? Did they welcome us? Did they talk about all the right things? Did they follow up? That's the biggest thing, guys. If you do nothing else other than people tour, and then you call them a couple days later to say, hey, thanks for coming. We really liked meeting you. Do you have any questions? Or are you ready to enroll? If you just do a few follow-up calls, you'll get 2 or 3 more kids, because people don't do that. And even if they say no, they're like, wow, that school was really friendly. Wow, they really made me feel welcome. And I like those guys. Wasn't right for my kid, but I'm going to tell everyone else that I thought it was a good school. Lots of little things like that you got to do. Okay. Yeah, good question. Any others? Alyssa, do you have another question?
I do.
All right, awesome, great.
So when you have a school and church combined website,
okay.
And in the toolbar, it's got, obviously the feature is the church. We are a ministry of the church, but in the toolbar, it has like preschool, elementary school, and some other tabs. Is there anything that we can do that you suggest on the church homepage that wouldn't take away from the church per se, but would bring a little bit of attention of if you're looking for preschool or school?
Yeah, I'd have one of the main menu items to be school. Okay. And direct them to a separate one. Okay.
Yes.
Because again, you want to make it as easy as possible for them to instantly get to your page and start to learn about you. Then on your school specific page, I'd make sure to have a menu item and a page by itself that is your feeder grade. Okay. So if it's pre-K, have a section that's just about pre-K. Okay. Because that's generally going to be your feeder. Okay. So it's much more important to spend more time talking about your great pre-K program than it is about the second grade. No one's going to join you in the second grade. Everyone's going to join you in pre-K. Okay. So your feeder grade has to become the point of emphasis on this. Okay. Video of your pre-K teachers. Okay. Because again, think about who's going to pre-K. First time mom and dad. They're nervous, they're scared. At that point, I don't care that you have X about a curriculum. Is my little baby going to be safe? Is my little baby, going to have the right snack time and things like that? Put yourself back into the shoes of that first-time parent and say, what can we do to make her or him feel very comfortable and safe about sending their child to us? Okay. It's all about, if you can understand and get into the mind of your parent, your prospective parent, you're going to be really good at this. Okay. And that's why that parent persona, it's a little bit difficult to do at first, but if you just really think about it and just describe it and put it on paper, that's the big thing. Just put it on paper, because it's not right or wrong. It's the process of thinking through it. That's really what you want to be doing about this.
And Elisa, I'll piggyback on that, Nick. You're absolutely right. Melanie and I spend a lot of time on websites, on church websites, trying to find preschool information or trying to find congregational information. And just having the school, or even if you say, Good Shepherd Lutheran School, and and you've got a tricky one because you guys have such a long name, but it's okay. You can have a bigger button. But as long as it's along the top, and then once you get there, you can do the drop down tabs. I've seen programs that have kind of the general about us, school and center listed there. And then they have, 2 big buttons. If you want preschool information, you go here. If you want, K-6 information, you go here. And now you're starting to see a little bit more. Maybe behind those buttons, they have those videos that Nick was talking about. And you can click on it and actually hear interaction. On the ELEA's webpage, if you go to webinars, you can find some that were recorded during COVID, but of some really good school tours that some of our programs had done that are, a lot of short little interviews and short clips of teachers interacting with students. Because I think, one of the things COVID did was make us really take advantage of the fact that we can see a lot online before we ever have to set foot. And where a parent might have felt, 3 years ago, like, oh, I can go in there and I'll see how the teacher interacts. Now they almost expect that there's something online that shows teacher interaction, that might show a director or school principal just with a general welcome, and show some other engaging events that the school is hosting, even if it's simply, center time or a gathering during an assembly. It's some way for people to really feel like they're immersed in the people before they actually step foot in your building.
And don't worry. Had you seen that video, you would have gone, wow, this is very professional, Nick. This looks great. Don't feel like you've got to be, Scorsese on this. A genuine, sincere video, that's fine. A good enough video that's posted beats the perfect one that never sees the light of day. Okay, so don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Get something up there. You can always make it better. We all can, but get something up there. Okay. All right. So Corey, when you put this out, will you edit my fumbles around with the technology? Will you edit all that out? Will you make me look a little bit better? That would be great.
I wish that I could say that I'll edit, but I will send, so everybody who's here will get the recording of the whole thing, because you'll get the Zoom link. But the one we post online will have a little cutout of some technology difficulties we may or may not have experienced during today's webinar.
About that.
It happens, right? I mean, we even practiced. The video worked, the screen sharing worked.
My goodness, I'm so sorry about that. I will just flash up here one last time. There's my email address and my phone number. If you have questions that maybe you weren't comfortable just throwing out in the group session, please feel free to go ahead and just reach out to me, and I'm happy just to provide you a quick answer or get on the phone with you if you want. A lot of this stuff is just sometimes you just need someone to talk to on these things, and I'm happy to do that. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much, Nick. This has been really helpful. And I think you had a lot of great tips for everybody, and some really good takeaways and reminders. Again, I loved the piece about that transparency. Those school climate surveys, I think, are so important, and making sure that we share those out. Sometimes it's really hard to share the challenges that we're facing in our schools and centers, and to just be transparent that this is a challenge. We recognize it. Here's how we're working on it. Builds a lot of rapport between your school, your community, your congregation. So thank you.